Hello there, welcome to the channel. This is Nerd.World, and in today's episode I am examining a piece of Star Trek lore that I actually find really interesting. It's from a single episode of Star Trek Voyager, where they encountered basically what I always thought was Star Trek's answer to the Cylons, the Pralor and the Cravic. Specifically, Voyager would mainly encounter the Pralor. Before we get started, if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe and comment down below, as it all helps the channel, and this channel is still trying to grow. I also have two other channels that are linked down below, one of which is quite similar to this one but focuses on films, and one is more factually based and focuses on historical topics. Sorry, couldn't get my own words out then. With all that said, let's get started on the Pralor. The Pralor were a Delta Quadrant race who were at war with the Cravic. These were organic species who, although it's never stated on screen and actually implied that they weren't, based on the design of the robots, I always suspected they probably came from the same homeworld. They may have even been the same race and just different factions of the same species. At least originally. The similarities in their technology just simply can't be ignored. They were at war, and both sides built automated personnel units, robots basically, purposely built to fight this war and crew their starships. When the two races declared peace, however, the Pralor and the Cravic, who were programmed to continue the war and not let anything get in the way of it, considered the act of peace to be getting in the way of the war and a threat to their survival. Nothing could be allowed to threaten their survival, so they turned on their creators, both the robot species wiping out their original creator races and then continuing to fight the war for God knows how long, and they were still fighting it from an unknown time period in the past up until 2372. Their starships, though, were the things that always most interested me. In terms of design, both vessels, both Pralor and Cravic, were practically identical, very similar in size and very, very strong, very powerful vessels. And it's kind of like almost kind of Goa'uld looking, kind of reminds me of a Hatak. In basic shape, it's similar to a Greek cross or star-like shape built around the central hub with 4 major points, but one of which is split into a fork, so in effect 5 points radiating out from the central axis of the starship. The vessels have incredibly advanced subspace shields that are practically impervious to Federation weaponry. The weapons the ships carry themselves, the main weapon they seem to demonstrate using, although it is likely they are armed with phasers or disruptors as well, were a type of quantum resonance torpedo that was very, very powerful. The only real flaw the Pralor and the Cravic had, aside from being very logical killing machines who wiped out their own creators, much like the Cylons, which is where I kind of made that connection, or even the T-800s, they were basically Cyberdyne in space, was their inability to reproduce. This was a safety protocol placed in them by their creators to stop them building more of themselves. Each one of them is issued with a very specific serial number, like an activation code. There can't be more than one code used, and the machines are not creative enough to create new codes, so therefore they cannot actually produce more of themselves. As a result, they were starting to die out as both sides constantly killed one another or destroyed one another, depending on your point of view, if you consider them alive like Data, which I don't personally, as they were less reasonable and more just logically based machines. They were, as I say, decreasing in number until eventually they were probably likely to go extinct. One side would win over the other simply by accident, whichever one was basically left standing by the end of it. Exactly how many of these starships they had is unknown, but they are very powerful. The only real advantage the USS Voyager had was it had substantially more powerful engines and was a lot faster. The machines are not really capable of technical development and don't really hold grudges, so they weren't going to come after Voyager anyway, and they were busy fighting each other at the time. The starships are, as I said, they're very interesting, and are clearly built by two very advanced civilizations that had once lived in the Delta Quadrant, which for that area of the Delta Quadrant was fairly unusual, because most of the races, like the Kazon and the Talaxians, although inherently, like the Talaxians, are an older race, they've been around for a while, they haven't developed a lot of the advanced Alpha Quadrant technologies we're familiar with, advanced high propulsion systems, or transporters, replicators, holodecks, cloaking devices, advanced weaponry and torpedoes, things like that. They've never really developed them. They're decades, if not centuries, behind the races that currently live in the Alpha Quadrant. The Pralor and the Cravic, however, were an exception. The reason I personally suspect that they were probably built by the same race, or at least factions of the same race, is when you look at either the Pralor or the Cravic. The Pralor specifically were humanoid-looking machines that had a grey metallic appearance, with a sort of silhouetted face rather than a real face. The Cravic were exactly the same design, just gold in coloration, and the same applied to their ships. The Pralor starship was large and grey, the Cravic version was large and gold. But they seemingly used the same weapons and a lot of the same base technology, indicating either the two races that were at war had stolen and overlapped so much technology between one another, or had come to some weird agreement that, yes, we're going to go to war, but we're both going to use this designer robot in order to wage that war, which is kind of ridiculous. So to me, their fundamental base technology was probably rooted in the same species, either a third party who sold it to both sides, or both sides are more likely the same race, but that's just my personal theory. A bit like United States or Soviet Union kind of thing. They were the two same powers on the same planets, utilizing basically the same technology to accomplish the same goal, but maybe they lived on different homeworlds by this point, like Romulans and Vulcans. It's hard to say, as both races are now extinct and the Pralor weren't exactly forthcoming with such detailed information, simply referring to them as the makers. The Pralor, the robots, still retain the name Pralor, same with the Cravic. Those were their creators' names. But I found them to be a fascinating idea that could have been explored more, I feel, in Voyager. They were sort of a villain of the week, whereas I thought they were pretty standout. Now, those similarities to Cylons notwithstanding, the idea of a race of killer robots roaming around the Delta Quadrant getting up to mischief was an interesting idea. They could have done another couple of episodes on it at least. Explored a machine civilization for once, rather than always focusing on an organic. Plus, their starships were really cool looking. As I said, they kind of remind me of a cross between the Goa'uld Hatak pyramid ship and a Greek cross-like design. But that's what we have in the Pralor and the Cravic. That's what I could find on them and what I remember from the episode, which is one of my favourite episodes of Star Trek Voyager, the episode Prototype specifically. And there we go. What did you think of the Pralor? Did you like them? Do you like their ships? Because there's not a great deal more canonical information on them, I do believe. Although I'm not 100%, they do appear in Star Trek Online, but I'm not 100% on that, as I don't tend to always follow beta canon. But comment down below what you think about them, and if you know anything that I've missed out about them. And with that said, like, subscribe, share, and bye-bye.